Now you might think that EVs are all about buzzing around the city, but Jeep begs to differ. They reckon the best place to go for an all-electric drive is way off the beaten path. In fact, sometimes where there are no paths at all. This is the new Grand Cherokee 4xe plug-in hybrid, which will land in Australia early next year. And it's got a petrol engine, an electric motor, and an all-EV driving range of around 40 kilometres. And as usual, we're going to be covering a lot of ground here. So if you want to jump ahead at any time, just use the chapter markings or these time codes and you can choose your own adventure. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe, throw us a like and join the conversation in the comments below. Got it? Right, let's get charging. Much mystery still surrounds the Grand Cherokee 4xe, and we don't know yet how many trim levels it will arrive in or what each will cost. But one thing we do know is that it's unlikely to be cheap. Expect the plug-in hybrid variant to be the flagship model in the new Grand Cherokee range, and we're tipping a starting price somewhere north of $100K in Australia. And that's a sizable chunk of change for a premium SUV, let alone a mainstream model, but we're confident in that call. Put it this way, the 7-seat Grand Cherokee L in top spec Summit Reserve guise starts at 65 grand in the USA and 115 grand in Australia, which means the $62,880 starting price of the Trailhawk 4xe in the USA should see our Aussie pricing prediction coming true. Now, what do you get for that investment? Well, aside from the obvious electrification kit, the 4xe is offered internationally in base guise, then Trailhawk, Overland and Summit Reserve, though Jeep is yet to confirm which of those trims will arrive in Australia. So we'll focus on the Trailhawk model for now, which is high on Australia's wish list and the model we spent the most time in. And if the price is the bad news, then the good news is that this looks and feels like a far more premium offering than the vehicle it replaces, both inside and out. In the States, the Trailhawk trim arrives with 18-inch wheels wrapped in all-terrain rubber. Other, more road-focused models get 20-inch alloys. There's LED exterior lighting with auto headlights and a hands-free powered tailgate. Inside, it gets capri leather and suede seats, massive 8.4 and 10.1-inch screens with navigation and Apple CarPlay, a 9-speaker stereo, though a high-end Macintosh system is also available. There's dual-zone climate, wireless charging, and a whole host of safety kit that we'll come back to in just a moment. The Trailhawk badge is reserved for Jeep's most off-road ready models, and the 4xe delivers with bright blue tow hooks, sway bar disconnect for better front wheel articulation, an electronic limited slip differential, Jeep's Quadra Drive 2 and Quadra Track 2 four-wheel drive systems with a 2-speed low transfer case and the ability to send 100% torque to either axle, and 5 drive modes, including those that are off-road specific. From the outside, there's no doubt the Grand Cherokee has an improved and much more modern road presence. The track has been increased and the wheelbase lengthened, but much of the new look goes into the design effort, which has made this new model look wider and tougher than its predecessor, especially in Trailhawk guise with its blacked out design elements. Even Jeep's iconic grille has been updated, with the 7 slots now less in your face, despite a new 3D effect that seems to extend them beyond the length of the bonnet. How do you know it's a plug-in hybrid? By looking very closely. There's the charge port, of course, but also through the blue tracing on the Jeep badging, and on the Trailhawk model, the blue tow hooks. But the whole electric thing here is definitely understated. Jeep says it doesn't want to yell about it, which is why this Grand Cherokee barely whispers it. This new Grand Cherokee's cabin really is a bit of a tech fest. Even Jeep admits the old car was feeling clunky and outdated, but this feels far sleeker, far more modern, and far more technologically advanced. I mean, in this cabin alone, look at how many screens there are. There's this big one for me, there's this central screen, the passengers got their own screen, there's screens on each of the seat backs for the back seat passengers. I mean, it's actually verging on ridiculous. How much of this stuff is standard fit in Australia and on what trim levels remains to be seen, but in this specification, there's no shortage of technology. The only real downside is that for mine, it still feels a little busy in places, like this aircon strip, for example, and even all these buttons on the wheel. I think it could be pared back even further still, but it's a vast improvement over the current car. The new Grand Cherokee stretches about 4.9 metres in length and about 2.1 metres in width, and Jeep says the addition of a battery and electric motors has been squeezed in without any compromise to practicality. Now let's talk space. Now, as you can see, I'm sitting behind my own 175 centimetre driving position, and as you can see, plenty of knee room. There's enough headroom too, and the back seat feels wide enough that you could probably get 3 adults across the back in something approaching comfort, if not complete comfort. But there are a couple of other things I quite like as well. So backseat riders get their own USB ports, but what I think is clever is the Jeep one has both the USB-C and the USB-A, so that no matter which plug you bring, you can always plug in. Backseat riders also get air vents. There's ISOFIX attachment points, obviously, and bottle holders in the door. But one last thing I want to show you. How many cars do you get into that there's a TV remote that has Netflix, Prime Video, and Disney Plus for the backseat riders to watch? That is pretty cool. Whether or not it comes to Australia remains to be seen, but I like it. In terms of off-road cred, the 4xe Trailhawk will deliver better approach and departure angles, around 278mm of ground clearance, 610mm of water fording ability, helped by the fact you can raise the suspension, and a 47:1 crawl ratio, while towing is limited to 2,720 kilograms braked. The Grand Cherokee 4xe combines a 2-litre turbocharged engine with 2 electric motors, but only one of those is big enough to deliver any real driving power. All up, Jeep says you'll get 280 kilowatts and 637 newton meters. That power is fed through an 8-speed torque-flight transmission and is sent to all 4 wheels, or just the rear tyres when the front axle is disconnected to reduce fuel use. The 4xe's 400-volt, 17-kilowatt-hour battery should deliver a 40-kilometre driving range in pure EV mode, and we found that estimate to be pretty much on the money in testing. Fuel use is a little more confusing. America's EPA rates the 4xe at 4.2 litres per 100 kilometres, but only if you're utilising full EV mode. Driven as a regular hybrid, the number is not as impressive, 10.2 litres per 100 kilometres. So Jeep's party trick has always been the ability to take its cars really far further off-road and into more extreme situations than most of its owners ever would. And that's certainly true of this 4xe plug-in hybrid too. Now, we're in the Trailhawk variant, which is the most off-road capable. And we're about to put it through some fairly tough exercises to see how it goes. But one of the things I do love about this is that Jeep wants its customers to go off-roading in electric mode. So you can select electric mode. It will then cut off the petrol engine. You'll be running just on battery power alone. And what's really cool about it is on the way to your off-road site, because you only get 40 kilometers of EV range, you can actually hit the e-save button, which means on the way to the off-road track, you'll only be using the petrol motor, saving your batteries for the off-road bit, which I think is pretty cool. It means you can essentially go four-wheel driving in some awesome natural spot in near silence. It can just feel a tiny bit under-engined, like that little 2-litre engine, when it's just working by itself without the electric motor to help, is working quite hard, and the gearbox changes quite frequently in order to find the power to move this big beast around. Now, it doesn't happen all the time and it's not overly annoying, but you do notice it because this car definitely does its best work when it's operating as a hybrid. But the fact that you can choose is pretty cool. And the fact that you can come out and do stuff like this is even cooler still. Now, before we really get started, I just want to quickly talk you through some of the off-road kit in this car. So as I said, this is the most off-road capable, but it's also got some fun stuff. It's loaded with what Jeep calls its off-road pages app, which allows you to check things like steering angle, the pitch and roll of the vehicle, but also has these 2 quite cool facing cameras, one at the front and one at the rear, that show the ground beneath the bonnet. So even though you might not be able to see exactly where you're going, the camera can see for you, which is a bit of a help if you're largely off-road incompetent like I am. We're now traveling on electric power alone and starting to head through our first obstacles. And I got to say, it is really cool to not have the sound of the engine humming away in the background. There's just the lightest little whine from the electric motor. Now, as I said, a car like this does allow you to do things that you might never normally think of doing, at least no sane person would, and this is one of them. So we're about to go climb a little rock face here, and this is actually the easiest of the challenges that we'll be undertaking, so, and it's already vaguely terrifying, which is a good start. But again, the capability on offer here actually really is impressive. Even if most people will never ever use it to its full abilities, it's certainly nice to know you can do it, and it gives you a bit of bragging rights too. So believe me when I tell you that this is not your average school run and shopping trip SUV. It's got a few more tricks up its sleeve than that. And this is one of them. We're about to climb this rock. You can probably see out my window. Spend a little bit of time on 3 wheels on the way up, and hopefully finish on our wheels again too. There we go, that's 1 wheel off the ground and back down again. Up we go nice and slow. Skid around a little bit. And just like that, we're on top. So if your local Coles or your kid's school happens to be on top of a giant boulder somewhere, this might be the perfect school run car for you. Nice and slow. I mean, that is a sheer drop in front of us here. And I mean a really sheer drop. And I'm told that this thing is going to do it with no problem, but we shall see. And I don't mind telling you, viewer, it is mildly terrifying, to say the very least. Okay, we're going down. We've got 3 wheels on the ground at the moment. I mean, we are facing straight down here, folks, but it is doing it with ease, sort of. Thank you. Yeah, better still, we're still in all electric mode. So all this fun is zero emissions and guilt-free, which is pretty cool too. So again, we're going rock climbing here. There isn't a boulder too high, apparently. I'm still vaguely terrified, but that's okay. There are a couple of other cool things about the drive experience here too, and one of them is that you can use the petrol engine as a kind of trickle charger for the batteries. So even if you're stopped at a red light or a traffic light or just parked, the engine slowly generates battery power for you so you can get those charge levels back up. So there you go, an SUV that can actually do some serious stuff off-road, and an EV that you can take pretty much anywhere. And that's pretty cool. The Grand Cherokee's local safety spec is yet to be confirmed, but there are plenty of high-tech systems offered standard internationally. Our favourite, though, are those off-road cameras front and rear, which can see where you can't when you're tackling the rough stuff. Jeeps in Australia are covered by a 5-year, 100,000-kilometre warranty, which is a little off the pace in a world of 7 and 8-year coverage windows. Jeep also caps servicing costs at $399 per visit for the first 5 visits for petrol-powered Grand Cherokees, and we'll give you another 12 months free roadside assistance after each and every service. Now, you can expect to see the Grand Cherokee 4xe in Australia in early 2023. In fact, it'll be the last to arrive after the 5 and 7-seat Grand Cherokees arrive later this year. The only question remaining, however, is just what it'll cost. I suspect this will be around $100,000. That's a lot of money.